Everybody, I want to, I've done these several times and turn out to get some really great questions, so feel free to ask questions. Q, you'll kind of take a look at those while I'm talking. If something comes up, just let me know, okay?
Absolutely. Will do.
Little bit about our background. We've been in mobility for over 10 years. We've been working with the GroupWise community since the GroupWise 5.5. We started with our Notify Link product back in 2002. We have a product called Notify Sync that we released in 2008, 2009 timeframe. Some of you may find this interesting if you're using the Novell data synchronizer or you're using a different email platform. As long as it has active sync, we created a client for a BlackBerry that does not require BES, and load our Notify Sync client on the BlackBerry and a direct connect to an active sync platform. And so our latest product, and what I'm going to spend most of the session talking about, and we'll make this slide deck available to any of you. It's a fairly long deck. Probably won't get through all of the slides, but I think you'll get a feeling. We're going to talk a little bit about MDM and the issues, and then we'll show you a little bit about some screenshots on the product, and then as the time starts to get close to ending, I'll stop and provide the deck to all of you. We've been a partner for Verizon or Microsoft Active Sync licensee. We've been on the wireless email Magic Quadrant for Gartner over the past years. Quite a few customers, both using our Notify Sync and our Notify Link. We're just ramping up our MDM customer base. It's kind of a very exciting area. One of the things that we'd like to say to you is that as you're starting to go out and look for an MDM solution, one of the things you want to do is you want to work with somebody that's going to be not so much in a hurry to sell you something, but maybe will take the time to take a look at what you're trying to accomplish with the need of an MDM solution, whether it's compliance, whether it's BYOD, bring your own device initiatives, a variety of things, and be able to, take a look and offer you the best solution. And I think as you're picking your vendor, these are some of the things that we've heard customers complain about, whether it's pre-sales or post-sales support, whether it's, being responsive. When you reach out to a vendor and it takes them 2 or 3 weeks to get back to you, or it takes you 2 or 3 weeks to get an eval set up, it could be very frustrating. I think another thing that we've run into is that a lot of the solutions out there can be very complex. As we talk a little bit about MDM, you can see where that's going to come from, but I think one of the things that we've done very well is try to keep it simple and allow smaller organizations to be able to bring an MDM solution in without it being overly expensive or require a lot of help in setting up the solution. Some of the things for you to think about in the MDM area is that these are items that companies talk to us about, whether it be liability, for BYOD, their compliance, do they have acceptable use policies, acceptable device policies. These are all kinds of things that as you sit down and talk with us, that we will go over and give you advice on. Customers ask us all the time about, what devices we support. Do you have a cloud-based solution? Is it an on-premise solution? How much is all of this going to cost? Is there a client on each of the devices that you support? Can you help us at all with our, wireless spend? What are we spending on data? What are we spending on voice? Can you set up policies on the devices? Can we manage applications on the devices? How hard is your solution to maintain or configure? So if we don't hear any of those kind of questions coming from the customer, we kind of flip it around and start asking the customer questions ourselves. And probably in the U.S., probably one of the most visible initiatives that we're seeing is this bring your own device. And then we start asking questions, do you have an acceptable use policy in place? And, are you going to differentiate between, corporate-owned versus employee-owned? Are you going to set up a different support structure, for employee-owned versus corporate-owned? The other thing we do is we talk to them about their BlackBerry enterprise server. Do they have one? Are they using it? Well, how did they use it? What's happening to your BlackBerries? Part of that questioning is taking a hard look at whether, to introduce them to our Notify Sync product, which would allow them to get rid of their BES, possibly save some money on data charges by moving from a BES data plan to a BIS data plan, and then be able to manage all of their devices, their BlackBerries, Androids, iPhones, with our Notify MDM solution. Also, we asked them, one of the things we asked them, are they changing, are they looking at moving their email platform? Are they going to develop any in-house apps themselves? Or are they moving their email to the cloud? All of these things come up. There's a lot of movement out there, and customers are, as customers either move their email platform or change it from on-premise to cloud, it's a good time to talk to them about mobile device management. Elements of an MDM solution. So here's where some of the education process starts. And what is an MDM solution, and conversely, this leads into, okay, this is really what this is all about, what we offer. But let's start on the left-hand side here, support for multiple device platforms. I think it's fair to say that most organizations are looking for a solution that's going to, pretty much work with all the popular platforms. And, in the U.S. market, I think clearly the two platforms that just seem to be, taking up most of the market share are the Apple iOS devices and a variety of the Android devices. The tricky part about the Android world is that it's segmented across a variety of hardware manufacturers. You've got HTC, you've got LG, you've got Samsung, you've got Motorola, and so that it's a little bit of a challenge, even though not all Android devices are about the same. It kind of comes back into some of the management challenges or support challenges. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute on what we recommend in that area. Centralized management monitoring. This is the dashboard, the UI, to take a look at things. None of the email platforms were really ever designed to be an MDM solution. What's happened is that when the vendor started adding active sync connectivity into their email platform, I think it was a very focused connectivity issue of where you take a device connected to the email platform. I don't think anybody was looking at the big picture of, wow, there could be a lot of devices here. How do we, look at them, view them, manage them, maybe to be able to do some things we'd like to do that maybe we were used to doing on our BlackBerry Enterprise server to these new iOS and Android devices. So being able to have a centralized point to, look at what's out there, what's connected, and maybe get lots of information to tell what are the devices, the types, the serial numbers, model numbers, and more, detailed information is something that the email platform providers weren't looking at. They were just thinking of simple, email and PIM connectivity. So MDM kind of really brings, opens up the door to a lot of visibility into the devices that are out connected that you really can't see if you didn't have an MDM solution. Security policies, corporate and employee-owned devices. This area of MDM is where you get into setting policies, being able to group users into policies, and policies the way we've laid out the product, policies can be specified for corporate-owned devices or individual-owned devices. So we make that really easy for people to manage. Compliance management and alert notification. We started out the product, the Notify MDM product. It's just celebrating its 1-year anniversary out on the marketplace. We released it a year ago. And in that time frame, we sure learned a lot about the market requirements. And one of the things that we were asked by customers throughout the year, and we just recently added this fairly sophisticated compliance manager into the product. In the early release of the product, we were just looking at some mild compliance management, like very simple things like, is the device jailbroken? Today, you'll see I'll have a slide on this in a few minutes that we'll talk a little bit about the depth of compliance. But think of compliance management is basically kind of the security force of managing the policies. You can set up a policy. Some of the policies can be overridden. When they get overridden by an end user, you'd like to be able to know that that's happened, and that's what compliance management does. And then it provides this alert notification to not only to you, the administrator, but also to the individual that hey, they've been caught, and they need to do something about it. And that severity of message is clearly defined by yourself. I mean, for example, if you just want to know that the devices are jailbroken, great, we'll tell you which ones and all that. If you don't want to do anything about it, that's fine. But if you want to do something about it, there's a mechanism in there to do something about it. Real-time device information and statistics. This is where we really create some visible information that's typically invisible to you. If you connect a device, if you're on GroupWise today and connect a device into the data synchronizer, you really can't see a lot of information about that device. What it is a mechanism to connect you really to your email and PIM synchronization. I will show you in a few minutes all the different real-time information that we gather off these devices. And basically that's done because we have a client on the device that's gathering that information periodically and then sending it back to the MDM database, and then it's displayed on the dashboard in real time. Application management and file sharing. I group these together. These are items that customers, this is an area where there's been a tremendous amount of interest, and I think it kind of evolves from a variety of customer situations where, customers ask us, can I control the applications that my users have access to? Can I see what those applications are on their device? Can I restrict them? Can I delete them? I mean, there's a whole bunch of questions that come up in this area. We provide a framework to do some application management. Unfortunately, a lot of our ability to do these things is somewhat restricted by the operating system. So, Apple gives us a way to do some of this stuff. Android gives us a way. And so is it always the same? No, it's a little bit different. This is what kind of makes mobile device management a little bit challenging is, how we create a common denominator of functionality across these platforms for the end user to make it easy. So what we do on our app management is we basically provide you a way, to define the apps that are what we call approved apps, and their information gets pushed out to the device, and so the end users can see an approved app list. File sharing in that area is kind of, we did a very simple mechanism here where you can load up files that can be downloaded to device. It's a one-way file sharing. In some cases, it will solve some of your problems. In other cases, it may not be powerful enough. But I would say that the majority of our customers like the idea of it. It can be controlled by policy. So let's say your executives or your management team needed some sort of daily information. They could access that, whereas other groups wouldn't have access to it. You might want to put your acceptable use policy out there. I think different organizations can use this in a different way. Asset tracking and location. We get for those organizations that are buying the devices. Clearly, it's helpful to be able to, provide reports on what's out there, for your life cycle management of the devices. So we get that information. A lot of that asset tracking information comes from the real-time device statistics. Location, we provide, and this can be turned on or turned off. It's policy-based. You could turn location on, and location is, opens up privacy issues. The way we deal with that is that, well, let me give you our philosophy on location. Location's got kind of two purposes. One is you can see where the device is or has been. But I think later on, as you go down to that end user self-service portal, you begin to see that we will use location as a way for an end user to find their device if they've lost it. I think to turn location off would actually, hurt that self-service portal's capability. So what we recommend is we leave location on, and through administrative roles, you basically restrict who can see that location information. So we've created, admin, a role-based admin capability in the product so that your help desk or certain levels of administrators will not be able to see things like location data or phone log or text messaging. We have the ability to, on some platforms, to actually log phone calls or log text messages. And again, what we call that is private data. And so with our admin roles, we're able to restrict who can see that. And this way you can still preserve doing the functionality. Report generation. We provide a variety of canned reports that can be run. Custom reports can be created, a little bit more difficult because they would be actually extracted out of the database. We could show you or write the report for you if you needed it. At some point we'll have a report writer, but right now we basically just continue to add canned reports into the list of available reports that can be generated. Self-service portal, this really answers the need to probably contain your support costs, especially if you're looking at BYOD, bringing in devices or increasing the support for the devices or adding, more corporate-owned devices. In either case, you're faced with, are you going to create a 24/7 help desk, or what happens, in those periods where you don't have your help desk available, or somebody runs into a problem with their device, like maybe they lost it, they want to wipe it, they want to reset their password, they want to do some, administrative, I would say common administrative features to the device. This is what the portal was created for. So I think it's a terrific supplement to your help desk. And then finally, we've pretty much had a lot of requests for delivering the product, whether it be in the cloud or on-premise. I think it really depends on your organization, what some of your policies are. The good news is that our product is single-tenant, multi-tenant. If you wanted to if you were a complex organization where you'd like to, have a system and, break your different groups into their own independent organizations that were independently managed, the product has that capability. Or you can manage everyone as a, single large organization or enterprise. Okay, so that's kind of a overview of what's in it. So if any of you had any doubts of the degree of depth of where MDM is, hopefully I've kind of enlightened you on how much functionality is in an MDM solution today, and I think we'll be adding another box or two here over time, just as this market matures. A little bit about the product. It does work with a variety of email platforms. It works with GroupWise. It works with Exchange, Domino, Traveler, even Google Apps for Business. Pretty flexible. Pretty much any platform that supports ActiveSync, we support. We designed the product from the bottom up. It is, for those of you that are using our Notify Link product, it is our MDM product was designed from the ground up, brand new. A client is required on the device because it does provide the mechanism for enrollment, file sharing, app listing, and things like that, and information gathering. It's really a key element in the information that's being sent to the server. Pretty much support all of the platforms out there. Couple things to note. We do support BlackBerry, but only if it's running our Notify Sync client. Otherwise, we will assume that you're managing your BlackBerries with a BES. And some of you may do that. But again, if you have a BES, you don't have that many users, or you're in a transitional state with BlackBerries, you might want to talk to us about our Notify Sync product in conjunction with our Notify MDM. On the Android devices, we basically encourage people to use the NitroDesk Touchdown client. It's very inexpensive. It's a one-time charge. It's $15. But what it does is it really provides a common denominator of email synchronization across all these different touchdown device or Android devices. We like it. We've got a lot of customers that tell us it really provides them a nice support platform and makes it easy for them to deal with all the different manufacturers of Android devices out there. Now, conversely, we've integrated with it at a very deep level, and so one of the nice features of using it is that we will auto-provision the email account once the user is enrolled on the MDM side. And there are some other functionality we'll talk about as we get into the sandbox capability of using the Touchdown client. We have a document that we make available that lists, the OSs, the features, and all that, and basically will detail out those environments where there isn't consistency. For example, we can log phone calls on a variety of platforms except for iOS. There's no hooks to do that. So anything that has any issues of supportability will be documented in here. You'll be able to see if we can force a password or a strong password across all the devices, things like that. It's detailed very nicely in this document, and that's made available to anybody using our system or even curious about our system. A little bit about our release chronology. That kind of gives you an idea of how serious we are about the product and keeping it enhanced. And our ability, we run what we call an agile development engineering group, which allows us to really design and develop things in a little bit different way than we traditionally have. So we put out a fair amount of releases. We have on our cloud-based, those things happen in early morning and fairly transparent. Most of this is very transparent. We have Update Manager on the on-premise version. We've got years of experience that allow us, I think, to be able to do this and provide, a very aggressive set of functionality and continue. I've got to refresh this. We've delivered our role-based admin, and one of the last features here we just put in the last couple of weeks was our role-based admin and our administration audit trail. This is where we actually log every administrative action taken, so that if you want to go back and look and see who changed something, deleted something, ignored something, it's all stored in our database in an audit trail. Very powerful for those organizations that need that level of tracking. Concept of this comes up every once in a while. Is the whole issue of a sandbox. This I could spend a lot of time on here, but I'll try to get it done in a couple of minutes. But a lot of organizations are trying to containerize or say, gee, I like all my corporate data in one area, and so if something happens to the device, I can delete it and not affect the rest of the information on the device. That can be done. It's done a little bit, unfortunately, it's done a little bit differently on every device. On the iOS devices, it requires you to have what we call this iOS Apns Certificate. For those of you that aren't familiar with this, is that Apple has this Apple push notification service that basically, once you get the certificate, believe it or not, opens up some advanced MDM capability. And some of that advanced MDM capability, one of the items in there is what we call Selective Wipe. So in other words, if the device enrolls in the MDM system, we push out the configuration profile, say of their GroupWise account or Exchange account or whatever email account. Let's say that employee leaves at some time or loses their device. We can just selectively wipe that profile. That would take out their email, their attachments, their address book, calendar, all of that stuff, and leave the rest of the device intact. Now, if you issued a wipe command without having that additional functionality, then you would wipe the whole iOS device back to its factory settings. And so that's what Apple basically has tried to provide, is that partial wipe capability where you can wipe the corporate and keep the personal. On the Android, without using Touchdown, there's no such capability. So what happens is Touchdown basically provides that container. And what's nice about it is that we can actually program that container to do some things that are very interesting. One is like force encryption, turn off copy paste. It's actually a fairly secure container because of that. And so then if an Android device is lost, then you could just remove the Touchdown client, take everything out, and leave all the personal information on the Android. Now with the BlackBerry, you actually have to be using our Notify Sync client. So our Notify Sync client is kind of like the container. And so that if the BlackBerry's lost, then you just wipe the Notify Sync client, and that would remove all the corporate information, leaving all the other personal stuff on the BlackBerry. So that's how we do that on those devices. Compliance Manager. This is a new item. Again, I was telling you that we kind of did this very lightly with the first generation of the product. Well, now that this has come out, so Compliance Manager kind of be broken down into 4 areas. We call it access restrictions. We got device restrictions. We have user exceptions, and then alert services. So just kind of like at a very high level, we're able to use the compliance manager. You would go into it and you would start setting up your access restrictions, your device restrictions, your exceptions, if you want to. You don't need to. You don't have to do anything. You could set up your policies and be just fine. But what we're seeing is that various organizations, you know, it's not like you need every one of these, but different organizations find that there's one or two or three or a handful of these restriction capabilities that they're interested in. Like, for example, on the device side, you know, let's say that you wanted to restrict, you know, certain models of, you know, Android devices or certain versions of iOS devices or certain levels of the operating system, things like that. We can get you down to that level of granularity. We keep a global database of information that is actually updated on your individual system that keeps track of the latest devices, model numbers, OS versions, manufacturers, everything. It's kind of a cool thing that we do. Part of our service is providing, you know, information on the latest, you know, whether it be iOS devices, Android devices, Windows Mobile, you name it, devices and OSs and versions that are out there. Yeah, so it kind of gets very powerful. From an architecture standpoint, you know, the MDM solution is very scalable. In this picture here, you could easily run 1,000 users. You can have the whole solution sitting in a DMZ. Most of our customers will go with this architecture if they're on-prem. They'll have part of the product in the DMZ, and then the database typically is behind the firewall. And then we host, you know, we call our on-demand, whether our partner hosts it or we host it. We run it out of the data center, our data center in Ohio, where we have our Notify Link on demand. We've been providing cloud-based services since 2005, so we've got quite a bit of experience. We have tens of thousands of users on our products, so we run a 3 nines SLA on our data center, so or on our services. So I think we're pretty good at it. Let me show you a few. We've got about 10 minutes left. Let me show you some screenshots of the product. And I just want to preface that if any of you are interested, you know, just reach out to me and or Q or and we offer you know, free 30-day or no charge evaluations on either the on-prem or the on-demand version of Notify MDM. So we're very easy to work with, and would be more than happy to get you to try this out. We're quite proud of how we've done this. This is what we call our activity monitor, a little bit. So if you think about some of the boxes that we talked about and what is an MDM solution, this is kind of what I was talking about. We have 6 panels. This is up, you know, can be visible at any time. And from here, you can see this information is coming in real time from the devices and being updated. We originally started out with about 6 or 8 different graphs, and just recently we've increased that to about 30. So basically, you know, you can check 6 of these and they'll appear. You can preview them. It's really cool. If this were in real time, you'd see how this looks. But these screenshots are actually quite effective. There's an alert section of this. These are the alerts that come up from the compliance manager. You know, if it detected whatever you set, that alert's going to pop up here, and you'll be able to see that in real time. This view is really, I would say, we call it the smart devices and users view. This is where you're looking at basically all the devices in your organization. It would be through this view. the screen's broken up into two sections. The left side actually could have as much as 30, 40 columns, scrolls. And basically, we display all the real-time information that's coming off the device and also the status of the device. You can adjust what you can see there. I'll show you that in a second. To the right is an area. So if I highlight one of the devices, there's an information area on the right that pops up, says what type of device it is, and then basically allows you an area to do some quick actions. As you can see here at the very top, you can do some search criteria. You can search by name, by platform, by policy suite. It's a nice area for an administrator to do any kind of research on the base of devices, users that are out there. This is the information that's displayed in the columns. So again, by checking the boxes, it appears. By unchecking the boxes, it doesn't. So you can either see all this information visually or it's in the database, but we kind of allow you to customize that screen however you'd like. And then again, the panel on the right-hand side, what we call the user detail panel. You got quick device stats. You can email the user. You can look at the compliance information. You can also do a set of administrative functions. You'll notice some are dark, some are lighter gray. It depends on the device. So this is an Android device, so you can't do the things that are grayed out, whereas if it were an iOS device, those would maybe highlight and you could do it. As I were saying before that, not all OSs are created equal. So we have our challenges, some things you can do, some things you can't do. It's really based on the limitations put on us by the OS manufacturer. How do you set up how do you add a new user? Actually, there are a bunch of different ways. You can manually do it. You can batch load it with a CSV file. You can go in through the Active Directory, eDirectory, grab the users, load them in. And the fourth way is where we call open registration, where you just allow anybody to come in and then determine whether you want them to stay or not. It really depends on the kind of organization you are. The more compliant and the more security conscious, the more you want to control, who's provisioned into the system, and open registration may not be one of your alternatives. As you drill down to a device, when you select in that original smart devices and user screen, let's say you highlighted one of the devices, once you go into user information, there's various levels of user information. This is the first screen on it, where you get the basic information of, who owns the device, the liability, domain, active sync. It's a lot of good information at your fingertips. As you go down to the next item, which is called last sync data, this is the information that we have gotten off of the device in real time. And this is cool stuff because you've never had the ability to see this level of information unless you maybe do it on your BlackBerry Enterprise server, or maybe our old, our legacy Notify Link product where we had a client on some of the devices. But this type of data and information is only possible because we got a client on that device. So you can see the battery, memory, SD card, signal strength, all that, and plus a whole lot of information. This is terrific for help desk. Somebody calls in, they're having trouble. Without this, you wouldn't really be in the dark on a lot of this information. Location data, you can see where this device has been as it records, each of we create what we call a sync cycle that the data is sent from the device back to the server. Those sync cycles, or sync intervals as I should call it, can be defined, are defined, and they can be defined down to the individual level. So you could say, I want all of these folks, I want their information, recorded every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes or every hour, every 2 hours. It really depends on, I think, their job and how interested you are in needing this information. you could see throughout the day where this device was. And again, this will be used later in the self-service portal to do the find me, where's my device. We do some auditing where possible. Remember I said we could do phone and SMS, and again, this can all be turned off. Let's take a look here. Organizational management. So, you know, we break these things up. This is what the user interface kind of looks like. You've got your user account settings. You've got your organizational control. Let's go into one of these here. Let's talk about policies. Wanted to cover this real quick. Setting up policies. You can either copy a policy, you can create a new policy. On creating a new policy, we invented this thing called a slider. These things actually slide left and right. There are 4 positions. They will create a default policy for you, which means they'll create a policy with, you know, 100, 200 settings in it automatically for you. Once you've done this, then you can go in and edit it. You'll notice that there's 2 items here. There's a corporate and individual. So that means that within a policy, we cover both, whether they're corporate owned or individual owned, and we'll show you that here in a second. So let's look at, if you look to the left here, you'll see notified default, and then underneath that, so notified default's the name of a policy. And then underneath it, you have application control, audit tracking, device control, file sharing. These are what we call our policy elements. Okay, so this is all, these are the number of elements within a policy. That's why having those sliders, set them up in a default mode are really nice, because then all you have to do is just go in and tweak the settings. But let's take a look at this for a minute. Let's look at audit tracking. So with audit tracking, here's where you can actually turn on or off whether you want to record the phone log or SMS or GPS or whatever. And you'll notice there's 2 columns there. There's corporate and individual. So, you know, you could maybe log phone calls for the corporate device and maybe not do it on an individual. So throughout all of our policies, let's get another one like device control. Okay, you'll notice there's always 2 columns. There's the corporate and the individual. And so just to back up just a second, when you enroll a device into our system, it's enrolled as either a corporate liable or individual liable. And so there is no, conflict. The device is one or the other. Okay, and then it'll be, its policy will be governed then by the column that it exists in. Okay, security settings. So I wanted to give you a flavor of, you know, what all of this kind of looks like in its, how simple this is to make these settings and changes. Let me talk a little bit about, you'll notice here there's an area called iOS devices. This is an area where you set settings just specific for iOS. Apple has given us additional control that we don't have on the other platforms, and so we specify that out. From device features to apps to turning browsers off. I mean, you can do things like turn iTunes off, YouTube off. It's pretty powerful. We can actually lock down an iOS device quite sufficiently. Here's more of things we can do. File sharing, this goes back to, you know, what I was talking about, where you can have certain files that are accessed by policy. Mobile apps, the same thing. Here's an example where we have some Android apps, some BlackBerry apps, some iOS apps, and we've, you know, made them available to corporate or individual or both. Here's where, this is the device schedule. Remember we were talking a little bit about the interval of which information is captured off the device and back. Again, here's an example of how that's set. Desktop portal. I'll end with this. You log into the portal. It basically allows you to, if you have multiple devices, you can pick the device that you want to manage, and then you can do a variety of things in there. For example, you could, and this depends on the device and our ability to do this with the device.